Hey everybody! If you're sticking with me, that's great. If not, that's no problem. All right. So, we were talking a while ago about Lonely Girl, the stamp that a lot of people are trying to get their hands on and that I'm reissuing. And I said I would try to find Lonely Girl, the original journal page. So in the process of finding Lonely Girl, I also found tons of other old journals. And the reason I have not cannibalized those journals and torn them up into other bits is they were in a cabinet in my hallway, in my entryway, that I keep my shopping mat, my reusable shopping bags in. So, you know, heaven forbid I'm logical. If they had been in the studio, I guarantee I would have been like, ooh, I can tear that up. Because I remember I cannibalized everything. I've talked about that in the past. I'm not attached to anything, really. I mean, yeah, I'm just not attached to it. The process for me is just so crazy important. Thank you guys for coming back. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'll try not to be so scattered as I was on the Instagram version. Okay, cool. So, digging around for Lonely Girl, I found these. These are my very first art journals. Now, what's interesting about this one is that it's missing its cover, or this is the cover, but it's missing its back cover. And it's also missing the first few pages that I ever did. And let me start by saying that I'm not embarrassed by any of these pages. I love them all. You know, I might think it's ugly or funny or, you know, that's fine. But I really do love them all. It doesn't bother me to show you guys my early pages. I'm not embarrassed. I feel like that's what I did at the time. And that is completely respectable and freaking awesome. Okay. So... And I think that this is valuable. So for me my point sharing this with you is that you see that, you know, my journey is a progression. I'm still on it. I'm not done cooking. I'm still progressing, and I hope I never stop, as are you. So, you know, don't be discouraged with yourself. You're going to look at some of these and think, wow, I'm better than her. Yeah, you are. Also remember, I'm self-taught. So the very first art journal class I took was in August 2004, and it was at Art Unraveled in Phoenix. I've talked about this a little bit. And it'll come back if you just refresh. If you're frozen, if you come back, it will refresh. Or just refresh your browser, it'll come back. So the class wasn't, you know, particularly informative, but what was great about it is it gave me permission to begin. And so I did my first page, which I'm so bummed I don't have. But I did my first page, and then I didn't journal again for a while, because back in those days, I was heavily involved in scrapbooking. I was on a bunch of design teams in the scrapbook world. And so I had a lot of other creative pursuits happening. And you know, this wasn't my main dealio. Okay. So I did start fairly slowly. It grew organically with time, but coming to art journaling was very natural for me because I have always been a journaler. I shared with you guys in the past, my very first journal I ever wrote in 1979, and I've got many, many volumes on the shelf, and I still journal. So it's very natural for me. So, and in the early 2000s, how everybody was art journaling was using glazes, covering pages first with you know, ephemera and paper, and also lots of earthy colors. I mean, if you go back to Somerset Studio, that's what there was. Maria, maybe you can share some of those at some point. Share some of what? My journals? I did show one. Hey, Jenna. Hey, congrats on the baby. I'm excited for you guys. So the first page is missing, which I'm really bummed about, because the first page is about how I'm uncomfortable calling myself an artist. These were wire-bound scrapbooks that I bought at Joann's back in the day. They suck. They're coming apart. But there weren't journals to buy, you guys. There just weren't. Okay. So, and then this is an image transfer done from a National Geographic magazine. Okay. So this was how I began. And I wrote legibly. I'm back to a deep exhaustion that is pervasive and unconquerable. I hate feeling tired. Normally I'm a person that likes to be busy, blah, blah, blah. So you can actually read these early journals, and, a failed transfer, this is just me beginning. So I was going slowly, glazing. I said in the other video that one of my first tools that I bought for art was a bottle of golden glaze. This is back when golden made glazes, and it was a purple golden glaze, and I might still have it in a drawer somewhere actually. And I was, glazing was what we did. When you've heard me demo glazing in the past, I've talked about, oh yeah, glazing was what we did. I don't think there's a page in this particular journal that's not glazed. So that's just how we rolled. And then this was very Tisha Moore style. So the original art journalers, of course, were Tisha Moore, and Lynn Perella, Michelle Ward, Katie Kendrick, a bunch of these iconic artists who were doing this before the rest of us. Yeah, Linda, those golden glazes were fun. They were already tinted. That yellow ochre golden glaze was awesome. All right, so I was playing around and, look here, glazed, sewing tissue in the background, a little bit of collage, stamping, writing. That's just what I did. That's just what I did. And it goes on for a while. This was one of the first pages I ever made that really talked about, this is my artistic fears. These were foam alphabets made by Making Memories. Do you guys remember Making Memories? And notice that I put newspaper in the background, painted over the newspaper. This was just the style. It's what we did back in the day. When Jillian watched this last time, she was like, oh, there's no white space. And there wasn't. I was still figuring all that out, right? A lot of introspection here. This is my dad. And if you recognize this is the rubber stamp that's in one of my sets. I always tell people this is my dad, and it's him. But this is the original collage that stamp was made from. Yeah, alpha foams are awesome. Tim Holtz makes the best alphabet foam letters. They're so good. Because for a while, all of those things got discontinued, and then he brought the alphas back, and it's one of my most used alphabets. And they're inexpensive, too. The Tim Holtz ones. They're like $12.99 or something like that. So collage style, because that's what we did. This one makes me laugh. I'm messy and I don't care. See? You can't change your stripes, right? This is when silhouettes first started showing up. And those grew organically in my journaling as well. One of these pages was dated. And so one of the things that I did not do a very good job at, you guys, is dating. So this was dated June 2005. So this is almost a year after my original art journaling class that I would have taken. It would have been August 2004. So, I really did have a slow start. But notice I have a little white space here. I did not date my pages, and I wish I would have. And honestly, doing something that regularly would be difficult for me because I'm just not regular in most ways. But if you at least date your journal. Like at the beginning of your journal, write the date you start it and the date you end it. That might be a good thing to do. There was another question. Do I make my own journals now? Sometimes, but most of the time I use my journals, the ones that are in my line. So just messing around, playing. You can see the style of the day, right? Another transfer. This one's really thick with paste. It doesn't really look like me now, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't look like me now. This looks like I put some glue. I was just playing around. Lots of text. I always tell you guys I believe in writing, and I still believe in writing. This is a Stampatique stamp, Stampatique alphabet. This looks like Making Memories alphabet. Looks like I put phone book back in the background here. So I mean, they're hot messes, and I love them. They just make me smile. Using a lot of photographs, because that's, you know, I came from the scrapbook world, so I was using those photographs quite a bit, writing in the background and then painting over it. So all this craziness in a good, you know, it's fun. This is an era of change. Do I have the courage to follow through? Right? Okay. So that was the very first one. And then came other, and I won't go through every single page of all these because that gets to be annoying, but I just want to point out a few things. So silhouettes start appearing more. And this was a rubber stamp from River City Rubber Works that I would use as a silhouette. And then white space is starting to show up. I'm practicing techniques. Didn't really turn out good. I don't try to cover it up. I just keep going, right? So this is when Adirondack spray inks start coming into play. So Adirondack, that's my old address, by the way. That's not my current address. So, and that's not even my phone number anymore, so you can't call me on that. So I took a class at a different Art Unraveled, and Sue, I'll get to that. I took a class at a different Unraveled, and it was a class by Lisa Renner, and it was a book that we made. We took burlap and we put joint compound in the burlap, and then we let it dry, and then we crackled it, and then we waxed it, and then we sprayed the interior sprays with Adirondack sprays. And so I had never heard of this product before. I ran out to the on-site store and bought every single color they had, and that was when I got addicted to sprays. And Adirondack was all that there was available. It was a Tim Holtz product that was made to be a fabric dye. And, you know, I think he has videos, instructional DVDs of like dyeing silk with it, all this cool stuff you can do with it. It was very dense color. And so you would, you know, on paper, I would spray it and then roll it with paper towels. In fact, I think in 2007, I did a video of how to use sprays, and I was rolling it with paper towels way back in 2007. So, because you needed to blot that dense color. So this would have been colors of Adirondack, and I just fell in love with it. I loved the way it mixed with acrylics. Silhouettes are showing up still. Some of my original silhouettes. More silhouetting, playing with different ideas, silhouetting. Sewing. So yes, I really would sew. I would sew those together and then glue them in. These are alphabets from like Office Max. Yeah, Adirondack is awesome. It's cool stuff. That color wash. It was called Adirondack Color Wash. Still doing transfers, altering, scratching into photographs, all that good stuff. But as you can see, things are changing. Even brush strokes are changing. Color story's changing. And white space is starting to show up. This is also a stamp. Doing masking with lots of different shapes and styles. Now that brings me to this book, this journal. Eventually I realized that I didn't like the presentation of a wire-bound art journal because I didn't like the separation of pages in between. So that little girl looks like me. It might have been me. So eventually I moved away from wire-bound because of the separation. But this is the journal that I was messing around with that ended up with Lonely Girl. So there she is. So this was just a collage. Caroline asked in the Instagram live, does that say nurse? It actually said yourself. In the text says, don't bother being yourself, it's not good enough. And then there's writing on the side. And white space, look at that. White space, white space, white space. And when I made her into the rubber stamp, with Photoshop, I took some of her hair out so that she has a neck, so that she, you know, the stamp looked better with a neck versus kind of just dark there. So this is where Lonely Girl comes from. And another silhouette. This is when again, I'm really using these techniques a lot. Still doing a lot of little collage, still doing glazing. I mean, that's just what we did. I mean, it was a lot of vintage. It's how we rolled. But my bright colors are starting to come alive, right? So you'll see this vintage stuff, because that's what was being, this type of stuff is what was being published in Somerset Studio. So I would emulate what I was seeing in Somerset Studio, and then I would kind of do an emulation and then go my own way, right? And that's how your style develops, is you emulate. Look at that ridiculous thing. I love it. You emulate and then you play. And, looks like I tried to stamp with a silhouette mask there. It didn't turn out very good. Notice I didn't cover it up. It is still there. That's great. I look back at that and I can remember probably doing that and thinking, oh, that didn't work. That's funny. New page. Right? I don't spend time reworking stuff. I just don't do that. I think it is a waste of artistic lessons. Learn your lesson and move on to the next thing, right? More vintage stuff. Okay. So then, I met Diane, when I met Diane Reevely in about 2009, 2010-ish, she didn't have a line with Ranger yet, but she almost did. So shortly after we met, her line with Ranger came out, and when she came out with her Delusions journal, I fell in love. Oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold on one sec. So when I met Diane, let me show you what I was journaling in when I met her. I was journaling in these really huge, large global art watercolor books. And I have tons of these. And that's why when Diane saw it's been about 6 years, Sally, with Ranger for me. When Diane saw my big black journal in my line, she was like, oh my gosh, that's so you. Because when I taught at Diane's store for the first time, I was working in probably these exact journals are probably what I would have brought with me. And they're just very me. I loved these. I loved the texture of the pages. The 300-pound watercolor paper that is in my 6x6 journal and in my blue journal is very similar to the paper that's in these books. And so I was working big. I was using a lot of black spray paint, like the stuff from the can. I was sewing on elements and gluing them in. I'm still using Adirondack sprays. And so this was kind of the point at which Diane and I met each other. And we told the story once, but I'll tell it really briefly. I was teaching, I was scheduled to teach at a scrapbook event near Chester in the UK. And Diane's son, who runs her store, and he's her business partner, he told Diane, hey, that lady that you like, because Diane had taken, I think she took Art Journaling 101 or something of one of my old classes. Ben said, that lady, she's going to be in the UK. You should email her and ask her if she wants to come and teach at our store after. So Diane messaged me. We set it up. It ended up being kind of a disaster. Well, the scrapbook event, my class was fine, but some people walked out because they didn't want to. They didn't want to do what I wanted them to do. So then I got to Diane and I said, "Oh, people walked out." She goes, "Only one," because she's been dealing with people who don't understand this kind of art for years in the UK. And when I found Diane, I felt like I'd found home. Okay, so. At this point, I had started drawing faces. I can't remember the exact year. I'd also started drawing birds. So this is some of my original birds. This is a moleskin journal that I'd used in. But look at some of my early faces, you guys. Look at some of those early faces. So I started where all of you are starting. I decided that I was sick of saying I can't. And that I thought, maybe I can. And I started trying. And they're out of proportion, and there's, they're not, they're great though. I look at that and I have good, warm feelings about this, because that was my origin. That's my origin story, right? And Diane she loves to make fun of me about how my early faces were a little scary. Yes, they were. They were scary, but I don't care. I love them because for so many years I told myself, I can't do that. I can't do that. And then I found out I sort of could. And with practice, I found out I can get better and better. And I'm not done practicing. I'm still working on my faces. I still want to get better. there's just lots that I still want to do. So in this book, lots of hearts. You know, I love my hearts. Lots of Adirondack spray over gesso. Lots of masking. These were plastic doilies that I bought on eBay probably. We were all spraying over plastic doilies. Yeah, I mean, these look like the faces that you guys draw in class, right? They're great. That's why I walk by them and I see them and I'm like, oh, cool. They're fine, right? Because that's your journey. That's your journey. Still doing a lot of layering, doing a lot of silhouetting. Birds are showing up, right? So you can really see that progression. Here's Lonely Girl, so my stamp line must have come out with Stampington at that point. And yeah, so that's this little book here. So anyway, so then came these giant books, sticking because it's golden paint. Golden paint tends to be sticky. This ended up being a stamp for the Stampington line, painting some self-portraits. I'm sure I would have either overpainted a photo there, probably, or maybe even traced my face on there to make it look in proportion. So you can see the faces are slowly getting better, right? And I'm totally having a blast with the process. I mean, those are hilarious. But I love them. Scary dude. I love him. Not necessarily finishing everything, just playing. Right? So these were when I met Diane, this is what I was doing. And the other thing is, so Stampington also contacted me around this time and had me mail my journals in. And so my journals ended up, they did a few articles, they photographed pages. And what's funny is pages that I absolutely hate, they photographed. And so I remember being so embarrassed. So one time they asked for a journal of mine, and I glued pages together that I didn't want them to photograph. So look, this is notes from Stampington. They would have, these Post-it notes were their photography notes. So this must have been in Stampington at some point. And I remember demoing this at Diane's store. So this was one of the things that we made in class at Diane's. Look at that hot mess. I love it. It's great. Oh, I always say I've made a whole career on a hot mess, and hot messes make me happy. I love them. A hot mess is better any day than working on chores, laundry. You guys know, you if you know me for any amount of time, you know that I really hate laundry. I just hate it. I'd rather clean a dirty bathroom, because you can put gloves on and you can get a bathroom done in 10 freaking minutes. Laundry takes forever, and I'm not good with folding and putting it away. I just hate it. I hate laundry. All right, so big journals were part of my story, which is why the big journal came out in my line. So then Diane came out with her journals, and I was like, hallelujah. And I have filled dozens and dozens of Dilutions journals, dozens and dozens. Most of them I have cannibalized. And that just means I've torn them up and cut them up and used them for other things, and you know, that's just what I did. That's what I do. So, but these three were in that cabinet in my hallway. So these are three that I have not torn up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually have three. Maybe I'll leave these ones intact as part of my little history here. But I was so happy that this Dilutions journal came out, because it's just such a pleasure to work in, right? It's easy to work in. It works great for Diane's inky techniques. I gessoed all the pages in these because I like the way paint works on gesso. So people would say, even if you're using a Dilutions journal, do you gesso? Yes, I do. I do. Diane doesn't, because ink mutes out something fierce on gesso, right? So we all use the journals in different ways. And I still love a Dilutions journal. They're great. I always recommend stamping on her Dilutions paper too. It's really fun. But you're noticing, so I had for a while I had silhouette stencils with the Crafters Workshop. There's Lonely Girl. So just playing, and at this point I am becoming much more prolific. I am starting to teach. I started teaching in 2007, and then I got busier and busier. This is a stamp by Pam Carricker. Love her stamps. But you're seeing a little more typical of me, right? These styles are kind of becoming refined and becoming more typical of me. If that makes sense. Must have been mad that day. I actually really like this one. And some I like and some I don't. But really, I mean, when I say don't like it, it just means it's kind of a mess. But in the same way, even the ones I don't like, I like. Does that make any sense? Listen, I'm a Gemini, so I honor it and like it in the sense that it's part of my story, right? It's all part of how I learned. And gosh, I really want to totally tear this up. I'll try not to, you guys, but no promises. I said I wouldn't, but maybe I will. All right, so again, well, just more and more. This is the one time I played with ice resin. Ice resin is not my medium, y'all. It ended up in my hair. It ended up in my carpet. It ended up everywhere. Lots more white space, lots of scribbling. It was about this time that somebody left a comment on my blog and said that why is my art so dark? And she said something about my art being really, really dark. And I remember thinking, well, I can't control what you see, but yeah, I mean, I love a scribbly line. I love a scribbly line. It just makes me happy. And I was super happy when Diane's Dilution Sprays came out because her color story is more similar to, the mine with the bright, bright colors. And then Adirondack Color Wash eventually got discontinued. This is Black Gesso, by the way, which we're going to be talking about this week. So we'll be doing that for this week as one of our topics. This is, I'm starting to experiment with drawings that aren't necessarily complete. So just having tons of fun. Oh, does that look familiar? Just having tons of fun. Gosh. Oh, yeah. Some of you have had this class. Some of you have had this class. That must have been someone that I drew in class. So I still love Dilutions journals. I still work in them. And then when I got the opportunity to have a journal, the Dilutions journal is perfect the way it is. I don't need to copy my friend. So, and I came from, part of my origin story was these old journals with all that handmade paper in them, which is why it made perfect sense for me to have all of those different substrates in my journals. So my journals came out, the black original journal, and then the 6x6 small journal, and now this blue journal, because I love the variety. I love the handmade paper, the textures that you get. I just super, super love it. I always say I'm equal opportunity journal. I'll have people email me and say, oh, I only have this journal, I'm like, great, bring it, use it, fill it up, then try a different kind. I mean, just quantity over quality, right? So that is kind of a brief artistic journey explanation through some of those early journals. And I just want it to be encouraging. I want you to be prolific and to fill up your journals with your soul. I always say the great thing about a journal is they're not threatening. A journal is a safe place where nobody else needs to see. Can you show the little journal again? Which one? Angela? Which little one? The wire-bound journal? Or this one? Ooh. This was a global art book that I did. Is this the one? Sorry. This is the global art book that I did long time ago. Long time ago. But it has one of my absolute favorite layouts of all time that I've ever done. And if I can find it, I do like that one too, but that's about it. Did Angela tell me which little journal she's talking about? This is one of my favorites of all time. It's Adirondack Spray, stamp from Stampotique. Love it, love it, love it, love it. This is the one. And then, so this one's pretty early. Oh, here's the other one. I absolutely love this. I just love this piece. It's textural. It's got white space. It's got text. I absolutely love it. I've thought about self-publishing a book of like my faves. You can see here there's stuff that I never finished. Somebody must have given that to me, so I stuck it in my journal because I liked it. See, practicing. It was kind of this little book that made me think I would love to have a little 6x6 journal. The pages in this weren't very strong, so they didn't hold up to a lot of doing. But this one's quite early. Again, because I was stupid and didn't date things. This must have been when I was teaching in Germany, because they were trying to teach me how to say some things in German, which I did not learn very easily. All right, any questions, you guys? Let me know if you have questions. Just make, right? Make. That artistic journey is something to be proud of and not embarrassed of. Just makes me smile looking at all these older pages and remembering where I was at the time, seeing how far I've come, but loving where I was then. I've loved every stage. It's almost like I did not go to art school. I'm self-taught, kind of a know-it-all. I just read a lot and I study a lot. I do have classes online, Jen, on dinawakely.com, and then go to the online classes section. When my kids were little, I had hard kids, so it took me 5 years on the fertility drug to get started, and then I got it started and I couldn't get it stopped. So I had 3 boys in 4 years, and this is the same size as one of my journals. My 6x6 journal is this exact size. This is 6x6. So because it took me so long to get my kids, I never wished away any stage, even the hard stages. And they were hard kids. I mean, they were crazy toddlers and high-willed. And Sally, the other abstract class, hopefully the end of this week. So I didn't wish away any phase. And so I guess my point is with my art journaling is I don't wish away any phase. I love the early phases. I love the I was figuring it out. The faces were out of proportion. I was figuring out color. I was figuring out white space. I was seeing how my different mediums that I bought, reacted with each other. So another question, can you please make one of your journals the size of the small one? You guys know I do have a journal the size of my small one, right? It's the little white journals. It's exactly the same as this. They're 6x6. These are the same size, guys. Just they have a heavy watercolor paper in them. So you can get this 6x6. The 300-pound watercolor paper is in this 6x6 journal. It is also in the blue journal. What products do you think are most important for people starting out? You know, I'm a paint person, so I like paint. I like the Stabilo pencil. I like my scribble sticks. But really buy something and then play. More white tags are coming. Play. Yeah, you pull out your old journals and look at them. Be proud. This is my Show Us Your Media gratitude journal right here. If you guys are playing along. Yes, I do gesso the watercolor journal, because the watercolor paper is in the journal, but it's not there because I like to watercolor. It's there because it can take enough moisture to stand up to all the mixed media things that I'm doing. So in general, yes, I do gesso the watercolor paper in the journal. Are you an early bird artist or a night owl? I used to be a really big night owl. I mean, I would work late into the night. The older I get, the more I'm tired at night. By 9 p.m., I'm toast. So I'm in bed at 9. I'm not asleep at 9, but I'm not in bed. But I'm in bed usually reading or watching TV. I just can't work late into the night anymore. I tend to try to work during the work hours of the workday. Laura, I got connected with Ranger through Diane. So Diane and I were really good friends, and she kind of encouraged them to look at me. And they saw that I was out and I was already teaching and was already on the road, pounding the pavement, working, and they liked that too. So that helped as well. So Sally, you said you use texture paste on all your early pages. That's good. So I always say, when you get a journal or when you get a new art supply, use it a ton. Don't just use it one time. Use it over and over in many incarnations. I mean, when you go through my old journals, you can probably detect what stencils were new. I probably just had this circle chipboard. I think this was a Jenny Bolin chipboard piece that I would spray over, and I sprayed over it again and again and again and again and again and again, right? And so that's what artists do, is you take the same ideas and you play and keep going, right? Use your products over and over. Repetition is so important. So important. It's how you learn too. What inspires me? The answer is yes. Everything. Other artists, colors, other going to art museums. Diving inspires me, the colors of nature. In order to use the color wheel, do you need to have every color? Nope. You certainly do not. You just need to know what is neighbors to the colors you have and what is opposite the colors you have. You don't have to have every color. Can you pre-gesso? Yes, I usually do pre-gesso journals at once. I've been to Australia 5 times, and I will definitely come back to Australia maybe 2021, because I think 2020 is toast for that kind of travel. All right, you guys, please keep creating and sharing, and thank you for joining me. I appreciate you.